Welcome back to Communication Research Methods class. This is Bram Duffee, and today we're going to learn how to create effective surveys for research purposes. And part of this will be through a review of Chapter 13. So by the end of the video, I want you to be able to understand the entire process, from choosing a theoretical framework all the way to analyzing your survey data. You know, a survey is a research instrument which respondents answer questions about their attitudes and behaviors, beliefs, perceptions, and values. They're really good at gathering new data, especially when people are the best source of information about what's being studied. I'm sure that many of you have done lots of surveys on your own. Maybe you were doing a pre and post survey to look at your learning in a particular class, or maybe you did a survey to talk about your experience at a hospital or something like that. Surveys do have their upsides and their downsides, and it's important to know both so that you can decide if they're right for the research question that you're trying to figure out. So, on the plus side, surveys are cost-effective and quick and easy to carry out. Usually they are able to reach a lot of people, and that makes it easier to gather information from a wide audience. You can send surveys out nowadays many different ways, online or on paper, and you can ask a lot of standard questions to help figure out getting consistent and trustworthy kinds of results. This means that the findings from surveys are often a lot more reliable and can be applied to a larger group of people, especially when you can get a decent sample size. The thing, though, is that there are some drawbacks. Surveys often miss the details of a situation since they don't focus on context. And once you set up a survey, you just can't change them that easily. You usually need a lot of questions that help you figure out the true answer to what you're looking at. And sometimes people may not be completely honest, and they might answer in ways that they think might be just socially acceptable. So if you're a sales manager and you're running a sales team and you're trying to figure out, about what motivates that team, doing a survey may not be the best choice because everybody on the team might be trying to tell the boss what they want to hear instead of a more qualitative kind of tool that would allow you to find out more rich information. So deciding to use a survey just depends on your study's goals. If you want results that you can apply broadly and you can fit within a set research method, then surveys are a good choice. But if you need detailed, flexible insights, then some other method might be better. When we create a survey, one of the first things that we do is choose a theoretical framework. And it's like figuring out what you're studying. And to do that, we have to identify the phenomenon that you're interested in examining through your study. And so it's like, what is my research question? And based on my research question, how am I using my evaluative tools through theory? And so there are different theoretical frameworks out there. And so let me just read off a few that I have on my list here for you. One is social cognitive theory. Social cognitive theory is this framework that focuses on how people learn by observing others and how they use these observations to form beliefs and behaviors. It's a lot of times applied in studies that examine behavior change, like health-related behaviors or education. So that's social cognitive theory. Another example would be symbolic interactionalism. Symbolic interactionalism is this theory that explores how individuals create meaning through social interactions and symbols. So a researcher might use symbolic interactionalism to study topics like how identity formation occurs, or to evaluate social roles and communication. So that was symbolic interactionalism. Another one to mention is on the list is structural functionalism. Structural functionalism is this framework that views society as a complex system where parts work together to promote, stability and things that are functional. And a lot of times we use this kind of theory to analyze social institutions and how their roles might maintain a societal order. But other theories are like conflict theory. Conflict theory is this theory that examines how power dynamics and conflicts shape the social structures and relationships. It often is used to investigate these kinds of issues that happen with inequality and social change and class struggles. So conflict theory is another great example. Feminist theory is a framework that looks at topics like gender and power and social norms and see how those things affect groups. A lot of times researchers use that to study women's rights, the impact of patriarchy, inequalities. So that's feminist theory. Also social exchange theory. That's a theory that looks at social interactions in a way so that these social interactions are exchanges where individuals try to maximize the rewards and minimize their costs. So it would be applied to research like on relationships or decision making and looking at social networks. So that's social exchange theory. These theoretical frameworks provide a foundation for us to explore lots of different aspects of human behavior. And so it's not just a matter of figuring out what it is that what thought processes and theories that we're going to back up our study. And it's also important to figure out a research question or a hypothesis. And survey research a lot of times starts out deductively. It means you begin with a survey of interest and then you formulate a hypothesis or a research question later, right? So you've got this theory and you're trying to test that. So we design the survey to measure the variables that will help us look at that particular research question. And when we do that, we have to ensure the survey is really clear. So for the survey to be effective, we just have to be able to provide clear instructions in language. We're going to avoid things like jargon and slang and double-barreled questions, leading questions, double negatives, overlapping or unbalanced response options. We just want to be able to make sure that the categories are balanced and also addressed. And so the success of a survey a lot of times hinges on how well these kinds of questions can be crafted. And that's what determines the quality and the reliability of the data that was collected. So I'm going to talk about the key considerations for creating an effective survey question and what kinds of questions do we use and what strategies do we want to avoid. So the foundation of any good survey is this clear and concise question wording. The clarity that you put out there ensures that the respondents are going to be able to interpret the questions as you intended them to and minimize misunderstandings and inaccuracies in the way they respond. To achieve this, questions should be straightforward, and we want to use simple language that's really easily understood by all participants. Getting rid of technical jargon, complex sentence structures for sure, especially if the survey is aimed at a broad kind of audience. There are several kinds of questions that researchers can incorporate into a survey. Open-ended questions let respondents answer questions using their own words, and that can provide rich qualitative data. These questions are useful for exploring complex issues, but at the same time, they can be challenged to analyze because of the variety of responses. So I'm doing a research study right now where I am evaluating the closed I'm evaluating the closed-ended question responses by thinking about how that gives me information and then compare that to what open-ended responses I get. So I have a survey that I have both kinds going on right now. The benefit is that I can understand my audience better, like the exact kind of person or type of person that I'm talking to, and then also understand their opinion. And so these kinds of things can be paired up with each other so that you can best figure out what's going on, right? Like close-ended questions are something that's going to help you be able to analyze something really easily statistically, right? So I have this many of this type of person, right? So I might be evaluating students and non-students and those who are seniors in the workforce, right? So these kinds of different populations I'll be able to quickly figure out. Same thing with gender and where people live and those kinds of simple things. On the other hand, the multiple choice questions that can come from like-heart, instead of multiple choice questions, like-heart kinds of questions can set you up to understand how someone feels, right? So like on this scale of like, how happy are you? Is it super happy or just kind of they're happy? So these kinds of things are designed for you to be able to stack so that you're trying to figure out a research question. You have a theory that you're using to understand the topic already, and then based on those two things, we stack questions so that we can understand our audience, so we can figure out what's important to them as it relates, so that we can get to the heart of our research question. Now, the order of questions in a survey can really also do something to influence the responses. So generally, it's advisable to start with a broad general question or questions and then gradually move towards more specific ones. And this is called a funneling approach. And this funneling approach helps sort of engage respondents and build context. And sensitive or potentially biased inducing questions go later in the survey. This helps to avoid influencing those other responses that came earlier. Also, grouping related questions together can improve the flow of the survey because it helps the respondents follow your thinking about what's happening, right? So if you're talking about one particular aspect of something, not jumping around and staying on track might be really beneficial because they don't have to reread and think about the situation. They are able to follow you. And I want you to avoid common pitfalls like that. And some of the common pitfalls also involve doing things like leading questions. Like a leading question is something that suggests that a desired answer should be avoided. And they can bias responses. So, for example, instead of asking, how much, let's say this, how much do you love our product? A more neutral question instead of that might be to say something like, how would you rate your satisfaction with our product? See what you did there? You just went from a question that was difficult to figure out the answer to, how much do you love our product? It's like, well, what does love mean? But satisfied, that's something that you can get there. And then putting something like that on a Likert scale from 1 to 5 gives you data that's easier to work with. And the ambiguous kinds of language out there that can mess up surveys just has to be avoided. And so questions should be as specific and leave no room for different kinds of interpretations. So, for instance, instead of asking, do you often use public transport? Gosh, that doesn't do much. Do you often use public transport? Instead, how about we specify a time frame? Like, how many times have you used public transportation in the last month? See, that gives us a better idea about what that person is experiencing in their life, so that we can also understand the topic better. Maybe we're trying to figure out people who ride public transportation versus folks that don't. Now, before throwing out a big survey to a group of people, it's a really good idea to do pilot testing. And pilot testing a survey is a really crucial step because it helps us make sure that we're doing something that's clear and effective. And by conducting a trial run with a small group from the target demographic, you as a researcher can identify any kind of confusing questions or technical issues. And feedback from the pilot test can be used to refine that survey. And that helps you make any necessary adjustments before full deployment. It means also that you don't have to make excuses for having a crappy survey later on when you're trying to analyze your results. So, some things to think about are these formulation aspects. So, open-ended questions, closed-ended questions. Let's talk about some of these. An open-ended question would be like, what are your thoughts on the effectiveness of remote work in your organization? So, what are your thoughts on the effectiveness of remote work in your organization? This question is useful in studying doing a study that explores the impact of the remote work on the employee's productivity. It also allows people to express their views freely because it's going to give you insights that can reveal diverse perspectives and maybe some new themes that you hadn't thought about. So that's what open-ended questions can do. Closed-ended questions would be things like a question, which of the following social media platform do you use most frequently? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn? So this kind of question is designed for a survey that investigates the patterns that might be used among social media users. Especially when they come from demographics, this is something that's going to help us figure out what's going on with that person by using predefined options. And having predefined options makes it really easy to categorize their response preferences statistically, but at the same time can put out some potential limitations, like to figure out exactly what it is that you're trying to get at. So after seeing your survey in practice, with a group of maybe just even 3 people in a pilot study, you'll be in a position to see if the data is getting to what you're trying to get to. We mentioned it a minute ago, but I'm expecting that everyone's familiar already with a like-heart scale kind of question, right? And in a like-heart scale question, it's like if you were to say, on a scale of 1 to 5, how strongly do you agree with this statement, And so 1 would be no agreement, and 5 would be fully agreement. It's this kind of question that can be used in a survey for detailed analysis on how a respondent perceives something, right, or feels about something. How you put together the survey will also determine what all is involved with your analysis. And there's a process that we go through to analyze data that involves looking for errors in the survey, making sure that we look for errors, and then we put our data into databases that help us be able to conduct an analysis to extract insights. And things are really easy to categorize and understand, even if you put all of your data into columns so that the questions are sortable, right? These are all kinds of things that, when it comes to analyzing later on, can help or hurt your process. So thinking through not just the questions that you're asking, but how all of this matches up all the way through, including the pilot study, will help you make sure that you get to the end and you don't just have data that's not effective. And what I mean by effective is that you might get halfway through and realize that you're not asking the question the right way, or by asking the question in about that question in a new way, you're able to figure out a new understanding. And that's what this is all about. You can't just expect that a survey is going to do a matching game for you and your understanding of a topic. It's an interactive process. And I want to thank you for hanging out with me as we talk about surveys and research. These surveys are awesome sometimes because they can be cost effective and really fast and reach a wide audience. But at the same time, these standardized questions can lead to results that you're stuck with. So making sure to do testing can make a big difference in the reliability and the generalizability of your results. So thanks for hanging in, and I'll see you when we're reviewing our assignments for this next week, which involves not just the quiz, but also we have a survey project that's coming up due in less than 2 weeks. So all those things are going to be there for you to show how surveys can be effective and how you can use surveys. I think that I've done lots of examples of surveys in my own research career, and I know that they can be effective for you. And I look forward to your seeing your work and working with you so that we can make you a good survey creator as well in this class.